Most people live, but never truly exist. They breathe, they eat, they sleep, they go through the motions. But deep down, something feels missing. Not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because they've never actually met themselves. From the day you were born, the world began telling you who to be. Be a good student. Be popular. Be strong. Be successful. Fit in. Don't ask too many questions. Follow the rules. Play the game. And you did. You tried. You wore the masks. You chased the grades, the approval, the image. You played every role you thought would get you love, success, and significance. But somewhere along the way, you lost something. Not a thing, not a place, but a person. You. Your voice got buried under other people's opinions. Your dreams were replaced with society's expectations. Your soul, your fire, started to fade under all the pretending. And now, maybe you feel stuck. Like you're living someone else's life. You're not broken. You're just disconnected from your truth. So here's the question you can't ignore any longer. Who are you? Without the noise, the labels, the masks. Strip away the job title. Strip away the followers, the lifestyle, the reputation. Take away the version of you that exists just to be accepted, liked, or seen. What's left? That's the real you. And that's where your life truly begins. Because everything you're chasing, peace, fulfillment, freedom, none of it will mean anything if it's built on top of a false identity. Let's be real. Most people are performing. They act like they have it together. They act like they're confident, successful, happy. But when the crowd disappears, when the noise fades, when they're alone in a room with their own thoughts, there's silence. Or worse, discomfort. Because they don't know who they really are. They've become a collage of other people's voices. A mirror of culture. A character in someone else's movie. And here's the brutal truth. You can't feel alive living someone else's life. You can't feel free when your identity is built on approval. And no amount of external success can fix internal confusion. That's why self-discovery isn't optional. It's essential. You have one life, one soul, one chance. And the most tragic thing you could do is live that life as a stranger to yourself. So how do you begin to find yourself? You go inward. You stop outsourcing your identity to the world. You stop running from silence. You stop numbing your confusion with distractions. And you start asking real questions. What do I believe in, really? What makes me feel alive? What kind of man do I want to become? What am I pretending to be just to fit in? You start journaling, reflecting, listening, not to others, but to you. And here's what you'll find. At first, it's uncomfortable. Because you've been disconnected for so long, your real voice will feel faint. But it's there. And every time you choose truth over performance, that voice gets louder. That fire returns. And one day, something powerful happens. You no longer need the mask. You no longer chase validation. You no longer bend yourself to be accepted. Because you've found something far more powerful than approval. Self-respect. And self-respect only comes when you're living in alignment with your truth. Not a filtered, curated truth, but the raw, honest, messy version of you that says, "This is who I am. I'm not perfect, but I'm real." That's the version of you that feels peace at night, that walks with calm confidence, that doesn't need to scream to be heard, because your energy speaks before you do. That's when life starts to change, not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop reacting to everything. You stop proving yourself. You start creating, leading, loving, not from fear, but from depth. And people feel it, because realness is rare in a world of filters. Now let's talk about the Stoic angle. The Stoics taught that peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering yourself. They weren't obsessed with image. They were obsessed with integrity. They asked hard questions every day. Am I acting according to my values? Am I being honest with myself? Am I wasting this day trying to impress people I don't even respect? That's power. That's clarity. That's self-ownership. And once you live with that kind of truth, you become dangerous. Because now, the world can't manipulate you. It can't buy you, break you, or bait you. You've met yourself. And when a man truly knows who he is, nothing can shake him. So I'll ask you again, who are you? Without the noise, the labels, the masks. You don't need to answer it right now, but you do need to ask it. Because until you do, you'll keep living for others, reacting to life instead of creating it. You'll keep wearing masks that slowly suffocate your soul. But when you take that mask off, when you decide to stop performing, You give yourself permission to finally live. And that's what you were born for. Not to blend in, not to impress, not to play it safe, but to be fully, fiercely you. And when you live from that place, not only do you come alive, you give others permission to do the same. You become the mirror for truth, the spark for authenticity, the reminder that yes, you can be real and still win. So here's the call. Don't die a stranger to yourself. Life is too short to fake it, too sacred to waste in pretense, too powerful to be lived by default. Strip away the noise, burn the mask, get quiet, go deep, and find the version of you that was buried but never broken. Because the moment you do, that's when your real life begins. From the moment you're born, you're given a name, but not yet an identity. That part comes later, slowly, subtly, and most dangerously, without your conscious permission. You're taught how to behave, what to value, who to become, not based on who you truly are, but based on who the world wants you to be. You grow up absorbing the rules of your environment like a sponge. Be good, be quiet, be impressive, be what your parents expect, what your culture rewards, what your school system praises. You learn to smile when you're sad, to say yes when you mean no, to chase gold stars and approval as if your worth depends on it. And little by little, layer by layer, the real you, your wild truth, your unique fire, gets buried under expectations. This is what Stoicism would call the false self. It's not a lie you speak, it's a lie you live. You become the reflection of others' desires. You act strong when you feel weak. You act in control when you're lost. You act happy when you're breaking inside. You don't do this because you're fake. You do it because you're afraid. Afraid that the real you won't be enough. Afraid that honesty will cost you love. Afraid that standing in your truth will leave you standing alone. But here's the tragedy. The more you perform, the more you drift away from your essence. Until one day, you look in the mirror and don't even recognize who's staring back. You feel empty, not because you have nothing, but because what you do have doesn't belong to the real you. You built a life based on other people's definitions of success. You chased dreams that were never yours. You became a version of yourself designed to survive, not to thrive. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And that's the heart of the false self, a prison built in your mind. You're not trapped by real danger. You're trapped by the idea that being your true self will lead to rejection, failure, or abandonment. But the cost of this illusion is too high, because no amount of fake success will ever give you real peace. No applause will fill the hole that pretending leaves behind. And every time you suppress who you are to be who they want, you suffer. Quietly, daily, invisibly. The Stoics knew this suffering well. They called it living out of alignment with nature. Because when you're born, you're given a daimon, a guiding spirit, a true nature. And to betray that nature is the root of all inner conflict. It's why so many people, despite wealth, followers, and validation, still feel hollow. Because they've built everything except themselves. Here's how the false self survives. It thrives on fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being judged. Fear of the unknown. And so, instead of facing the fear, we hide behind roles. The tough guy, the nice guy, the achiever, the victim, the perfectionist. Each role comes with a script. Lines you're supposed to say, feelings you're supposed to suppress, reactions you're supposed to fake. And at some point, you forget that it's all just a performance. You believe the character is real. You defend it, protect it, argue for it. Because deep down, you don't believe you're worthy without the act. But you are. You've just forgotten. You've forgotten that the raw, imperfect, uncertain version of you is exactly where your power lives. Because truth is power, authenticity is peace, and presence, real, grounded, no-mask presence, is rare and irresistible. The false self doesn't want you to hear this. Because if you drop the mask, the ego dies. And the ego will do anything to survive. It will keep you chasing the next achievement, the next body goal, the next validation hit. It will whisper that you're not ready, that it's safer to pretend. It will convince you that being accepted for a lie is better than being rejected for the truth. But deep down, you know that's not true. Because no matter how much you have, if you're not being you, it's not worth it. You weren't born to impress. You were born to express. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to stand in your truth, even if it cost you comfort. And that's the moment your real life begins. When you stop trying to win the world and start trying to meet yourself. The The Stoics didn't care about image. They didn't care about status. They didn't care about applause. They cared about living in harmony with their nature. That meant practicing what they believed, even when no one was watching. It meant owning their flaws without shame. It meant living by reason, not emotion. It meant choosing truth over performance. That's why Stoicism is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming fearless. Fearless enough to remove the mask. Fearless enough to face yourself in the mirror and not flinch. Fearless enough to say, I may not be perfect, but at least I'm real. Let's go deeper. Think about your daily habits. Are they yours? Or are they habits you adopted to fit in? Think about your opinions. Do you truly believe them? Or did you absorb them from peers, influencers, or family? Think about your goals. Do they light you up from the inside? Or are you chasing them to prove something? To people who don't even matter? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're necessary. Because until you answer them honestly, the false self will keep running your life. You'll keep playing roles, wearing masks, living reactively. But once you begin to question everything, the game changes. You take the first step toward reclaiming your identity. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop performing. You start living. And the voice of the real you, buried under years of pretending, starts to return. It says, I'm still here. I've been waiting. Let's rebuild. And when you answer that voice, your life begins to align. You start speaking with clarity. You start acting with purpose. You stop needing permission to be who you are. That's freedom. Not external freedom, but internal, soul deep, unshakable. So let this be the moment you stop selling your authenticity for acceptance. Let this be the moment you look at your false self and choose to let it go. Not with hate, but with gratitude. Because it got you here. It protected you. But it's time to evolve. It's time to meet the man beneath the mask. And when you do, you'll realize you were never broken. You were buried. But now you rise. There comes a moment in every life where the mask cracks, where the outer world, no matter how polished or perfect it appears, begins to feel empty. A moment where success tastes bland, noise becomes unbearable, and even being surrounded by people still feels lonely. This moment is what we call the breaking point. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't always come with a dramatic collapse. Sometimes it slips in silently, in the middle of a routine day. You're sitting at your desk, driving your car, lying next to someone you thought you loved, and suddenly, something inside you whispers, I don't know who I am anymore. You feel lost, not geographically, but existentially. You've followed all the rules, done everything right. You've built a life that looks good from the outside, but inside, you're tired, disconnected, heavy, and it scares you, because no one prepared you for this. They told you to chase the dream, but they didn't tell you what to do when the dream doesn't fulfill you. They told you to be strong, but they never taught you how to feel safe falling apart. They told you to keep pushing, but never when to pause. And so, you reach the breaking point, and it feels like failure. But what if it's not? What if this moment, the pain, the confusion, the inner emptiness, is not the end of your story, but the true beginning? In Stoic philosophy, adversity is not your enemy, it's your mirror. It doesn't show you how broken you are. It shows you what you've outgrown. The breaking point isn't destruction. It's revelation. It reveals the life you built out of fear. The choices you made to be liked, not to be real. The patterns you've repeated just to survive. And in that moment of collapse, when the identity you've clung to starts to crumble, a deeper voice rises, the voice of your true self. But most people run from that voice. They numb it, distract it, scroll past it. They see the pain and think, something is wrong with me. But the Stoic sees the pain and says, something wants to wake up in me. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke. The breaking point is not the problem. It's the invitation. It's life pulling you inward, saying, you've been living too far from yourself. Come home. It's asking you to stop running. To stop building your worth on outcomes, opinions, and validations that change with the wind. You weren't born to live exhausted. You weren't born to be everything for everyone, but nothing for yourself. You weren't born to perform. You were born to be. And that begins when you hit bottom. When there's nothing left to prove. When the applause no longer moves you. When you look around at all you've accumulated and realize, it's not enough, because you are not inside of it. That's when the inward journey begins. You start asking different questions. Not what do they think of me, but what do I think of me? Not how can I achieve more, but what parts of me have I abandoned? The pain becomes a compass. The burnout tells you, you've been chasing without rest. The loneliness says, you've been surrounded but never seen. The confusion whispers, you've been playing a role, it's time to drop the script. And in that space, that raw, vulnerable, terrifying space, you begin to feel something ancient, something real, something that's been patiently waiting beneath the noise. Yourself, not the curated self, not the projected self, not the version of you the world asked for. The real you, unpolished, undeniable, unapologetic. That's the gift of the breaking point. It strips away what isn't true. It leaves you standing naked, emotionally, spiritually, not to shame you, but to free you. Because you can't rebuild until you're honest about what needs to be torn down. You can't find yourself until you stop pretending to be someone else. Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom is not born in comfort. It's born in collapse." And if you're there, if you're standing in that fragile place where nothing feels clear, breathe. You're not broken. You're breaking open. This is where all the noise starts to fade. Where you stop asking for directions and start listening to your intuition. Where you stop begging for validation and start building self-trust. You begin to realize that stillness is not a lack of progress. It's the foundation of power. That solitude is not emptiness. It's space for rediscovery. That discomfort is not punishment. It's the pain of old skin peeling away. The breaking point is not chaos. It's clarity in disguise. Because only when you're forced to sit with yourself, with no distractions, no affirmations, no filters, do you realize what you truly believe, what you truly want, who you truly are. The world tells you, get back up, grind harder, don't stop. But the Stoic says, pause, observe, reflect. Only a fool keeps running after tripping. The wise man kneels, examines the wound, learns the lesson, then rises, not faster, but clearer. If you're in the fire right now, don't waste it. Don't numb it. Don't rush through it. Feel it. Let it burn away the illusions. Let it burn away the false self. And what remains will be you, not the version of you the world applauds, the version you respect, the version that can walk through chaos with calm, the version that no longer fears failure because he's already been to the bottom and found peace there. Remember this, the breaking point is not the end. It's the moment you stop chasing the world and start finding yourself. It's the moment you realize your pain isn't proof of weakness. It's proof you're ready for depth. And from that depth, you rise. Slower, stronger, softer, but above all, more you. The journey inward is the only one that leads home. It begins not with movement, but with stillness. Not with answers, but with questions. And not with seeking more, but letting go. In a world obsessed with speed, validation, and appearances, turning inward feels unnatural at first. We're trained to look outward, to measure our worth by how much we do, how much we own, and how others perceive us. But sooner or later, every man who seeks peace must face this truth. Real life doesn't begin with what you gain. It begins with what you understand about yourself. Self-honesty is the gate. Not the romantic kind, but brutal, raw honesty. The kind that requires courage. The kind that looks in the mirror and sees not a failure, but a facade. The roles we've played. The masks we've worn. The identities we've borrowed just to survive. You must be willing to confront all of that and let it die. The journey inward is not for the faint of heart. It demands that you sit with yourself in silence. No distractions, no performances, just you and your thoughts. And that's where the real war begins. Because the moment the noise fades, the truth speaks. And it doesn't shout, it whispers. You begin to realize how much of your life has been spent running. From pain, from discomfort, from truth, from yourself. You begin to notice the fear that lives beneath your ambition. The emptiness that shadows your achievements. The resentment you've buried beneath the smiles. And yet, this is not defeat. This is awareness. And awareness is the first breath of transformation. Solitude is the sacred space where this awareness blooms. Not loneliness, not isolation, but chosen solitude, the space between stimulus and reaction where the soul can finally breathe. Where you're no longer performing, no longer proving, no longer posturing, just present. Marcus Aurelius would rise before dawn to write in silence. He understood that without time alone, a man becomes a puppet, pulled by the strings of impulse, ego, and public opinion. In solitude, you begin to see again. You see the habits that no longer serve you. You see the thought loops that keep you small. You see the quiet longing, not for more, but for meaning. And that seeing is painful, but purifying. This is why journaling becomes a weapon, not just a habit. A weapon to slay illusions. When you write, you reflect. When you reflect, you clarify. And when you clarify, you take your power back from every lie you've told yourself. Writing is not about documenting your day. It's about decoding your mind. It's the conversation with yourself that no one else gets to hear, but the one that defines your life. You begin to notice patterns, emotional triggers, hidden wounds, and more importantly, you start asking better questions. Not why is life so hard, but why do I react this way? Not why don't people see me, but where am I still hiding from myself? The Stoics believed in this constant self-examination, not to indulge in overthinking, but to cultivate awareness without judgment. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Journaling exposes those imagined fears. It reduces them to ink, and once written down, they lose their power. And with every entry, you begin to release. You let go of who you thought you had to be, the people you tried to please, the masks you wore to survive. You let go of the need to be impressive and replace it with the desire to be real. And here's the paradox. The more real you become, the less you need, and the more peaceful you feel. Because alignment doesn't come from acquisition. It comes from integration, from being the same person in solitude as you are in the crowd, from saying what you mean and meaning what you say, from honoring your word to others, yes, but especially to yourself. This is the quiet confidence of the Stoic. Not arrogance, not loud bravado, but a deep, calm rootedness in self. You begin to develop what Epictetus called inner citadel, a fortified mind that no chaos can breach. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop fearing silence and start feeding from it. Because now, silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where your intuition speaks, where your clarity sharpens, where your power regenerates. And from this silence, something even more beautiful begins to grow: self-respect. You no longer tolerate what once drained you. You no longer overextend for people who misunderstand you. You no longer abandon yourself to feel accepted. You don't need to scream to be seen, because you finally see yourself. And that changes everything. When you respect yourself, your energy changes. You stop begging life for scraps. You stop performing for love. You stop proving your worth through noise. And life, mysteriously, begins to respond. Not because you manipulate it, but because you've aligned with it. You become less reactive to the storm and more tuned to the stillness within. You start moving with intention, speaking with clarity, choosing with calm, letting go with grace. Because now, your strength is not in what you hold on to, but in what you can release. This is the Stoic's power: surrender without weakness, engagement without attachment, action without desperation. And the man who lives from this place, he becomes unshakable, not because life stops testing him, but because he's no longer resisting reality. He's flowing with it. He's not afraid to feel. He's not afraid to fall, because he knows every fall is a chance to go deeper. Every loss is an invitation inward. Every setback is a return to center. And so the journey continues, not upward, not outward, but inward. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the freer you become. You realize you are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your labels. You are something more, something constant, silent, and sovereign. And once you find that, no one can take it from you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." That source is not outside, not in money, not in applause, not even in love from others. It's in presence, in truth, in the quiet flame that flickers inside you, waiting for you to come home. So if you feel disconnected, if you feel numb, if you feel like something's missing, don't run forward. Sit down, close your eyes, and go inward, because everything you've been chasing is already inside you, buried beneath the noise. And once you touch it, you'll never live the same. Because the man who finds himself doesn't need to chase the world anymore. There comes a moment in every man's life when he must answer one of the hardest questions he'll ever face. Who am I really? Not who you've been told to be, not who you pretend to be, not who others expect you to be, but beneath the noise, the masks, the wounds, what do you truly stand for? This is the beginning of reclaiming your identity. Because most people don't lose themselves in one catastrophic moment. They lose themselves slowly through small compromises, through saying yes when they meant no, through staying silent when they should have spoken, through chasing approval instead of listening to their own truth. And one day they wake up and don't recognize the person in the mirror, not because they've changed, but because they've been shaped by everything around them instead of something within them. The world doesn't just ask you to fit in, it rewards you for it. Say what's popular, post what's trendy, dress like the crowd, think like the masses. But Stoicism cuts through all of that with one piercing truth. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And most people have fallen. They've fallen for pleasure over purpose. They've fallen for comfort over conviction. They've fallen for being liked instead of being real. But there is a way back, and it starts with intentionality. You cannot live with power if you live on autopilot. You cannot walk with purpose if you don't know what you stand for. This is where core values come in, not as buzzwords, but as the foundation of your identity. What are your non-negotiables? What do you refuse to tolerate in others, and more importantly, in yourself? What principles are so important to you that you would rather lose everything than betray them? Because without those answers, you are not living. You're floating, being pushed by circumstances, emotions, and people's opinions. But the moment you choose your values, not borrow them, choose them, you become dangerous. Not violent, not aggressive, but centered, unshakable, focused, free. This is why the Stoics valued virtue above everything else. Not fame, not money, not recognition, just virtue, the unbreakable alignment between your values and your actions. Courage, temperance, justice, wisdom, not as ideas, but as lived truths. And so you begin to audit your life. You ask hard questions. Am I living in a way that reflects my values? Am I surrounded by people who respect my boundaries? Am I building a life I chose, or one I inherited? And you don't rush to answer. You sit with the discomfort, because discomfort is where honesty lives. And through that discomfort, you start to strip away the false layers. You let go of the habits that drain you. You walk away from people who manipulate you. You say no to anything that dilutes your self-respect. Because identity isn't just found, it's built. And you build it by doing hard things. Not to prove yourself to others, but to remind yourself of who you are. You start waking up early not because it's trendy, but because you value discipline. You start speaking your truth not because you like conflict, but because you value integrity. You start cutting off distractions not because it's easy, but because you value clarity. Every small decision becomes a statement. This is who I am now. And yes, it's lonely at times. You'll lose people. You'll be misunderstood. You'll question yourself. But better to walk alone in truth than be surrounded in pretense. This is the Stoic way, to hold your ground, even when it's not convenient, even when it costs you, even when no one's watching. Because your identity doesn't need an audience. It needs alignment. Let others chase status. Let others chase attention. Let others chase pleasure. You chase depth. You choose to become someone you respect. And once you do that, you stop settling. You stop chasing people who drain you. You stop begging for opportunities that aren't aligned. You stop betraying your inner voice just to be accepted. Instead, you start attracting what aligns with your integrity. Because when a man lives with intention, he becomes magnetic, not through manipulation, but through presence. He knows what he wants. He knows what he will and won't tolerate. And he's not afraid to walk away from anything that threatens that clarity. That's power. That's peace. That's identity. You no longer live to please. You no longer adapt to fit in. You no longer compromise your peace for comfort. And day by day, something changes. Your standards rise. Your energy sharpens. Your purpose deepens. And the world? It starts responding differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. People begin to respect you more. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. You say what you mean. You follow through. You stay calm under pressure. You choose silence over drama, purpose over popularity, solitude over noise. And here's the real magic. When you find your identity, you free others to find theirs. Your presence becomes an example, not of perfection, but of authenticity. You give others permission to stop pretending. You give others permission to speak truthfully. You give others permission to live with honor. Because your life becomes your message. So the question is no longer, what do I want? It's, who do I need to become to live the life I desire? That's the shift. You stop chasing and start embodying. You don't pray for peace. You become peaceful. You don't beg for success. You show up with discipline. You don't wait for love. You radiate self-respect. Because your identity is not built in public. It's built in private, in the quiet choices, in the moments no one sees. And the reward? You wake up one day and realize you no longer need permission to be yourself. You no longer shrink to fit. You no longer run from discomfort. You are who you say you are. And that's the beginning of real freedom. There is a moment, a quiet shift, when everything begins to click. It doesn't come with noise. It doesn't need celebration. It doesn't ask for applause. It's the moment you realize you've stopped chasing and started choosing. This is the power of alignment. When you are aligned with who you truly are, life no longer feels like a constant fight. It becomes a series of clear choices. Not always easy, but clear. You know what to walk toward. You know what to walk away from. You no longer need a map because you found your compass, and it's internal. Alignment isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's the quiet confidence that comes when your actions, your thoughts, and your values are finally moving in the same direction. And once you reach that state, the game changes. Suddenly, decisions become easier. You don't overthink every step. You don't seek validation for every move. You don't paralyze yourself with what if. Because when you know who you are, the question becomes, does this serve me or sabotage me? Does this align with my values or violate them? And that clarity, that's rare, that's powerful, that's dangerous in the best way. Let the world chase trends. Let others build personas. Let them perform. You operate from truth. And here's the paradox. The more you align with yourself, the less noise you need from the outside world. You don't need the likes. You don't need the attention. You don't need everyone to get it. Because when you're grounded in truth, you don't need to convince anyone. You simply are. And this is when you start moving differently. You enter rooms with quiet presence. You make decisions without doubting your intuition. You walk away from chaos, not because you're weak, but because your peace is too valuable to be sold. You've tasted the power of alignment, and you're not willing to lose it for anyone or anything. This is what the Stoics knew long before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, act in alignment. Don't talk about discipline. Live it. Don't post about peace. Protect it. Don't quote wisdom. Embody it. And when you do, the rewards multiply in silence. You begin to attract not what you want, but what matches who you are. People feel your steadiness. Opportunities feel less forced. Relationships flow more naturally. And life, despite its chaos, becomes manageable. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Alignment isn't about having the perfect life. It's about having inner agreement, where your soul no longer fights your habits, where your values no longer get compromised by your routines, where you don't have to apologize to yourself at the end of every day. You look in the mirror and respect what you see. And that feeling? That's priceless. So how do you get there? You audit your life. You remove what's not aligned. You simplify. You subtract. You stop saying yes to people just because you fear disappointing them. You stop saying no to your inner voice because it's not convenient. You stop compromising your peace just to be accepted. You take the hard road, the silent road, the stoic road. And here's the beauty. Alignment brings peace, but also power. Because from that centered place, you don't just feel calm, you feel strong. No more anxious energy. No more running on empty. No more burning yourself out for things that don't even matter. You move slower, but with intention. You speak less, but with weight. You do less, but with impact. This is where purpose replaces pressure. You no longer hustle for validation. You build from clarity. You no longer chase achievement for applause. You create from meaning. You no longer live for the weekend. You live from your values. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop comparing. You start leading. You stop proving. You start being. And everything changes. Your routine becomes sacred. Your time becomes gold. Your attention becomes protected. Because now, You're living on purpose, not default. You choose your words more carefully. You filter your relationships more intentionally. You manage your emotions more maturely. And suddenly, you realize you're not fighting yourself anymore. The war between who you are and who you pretend to be is over. And in that peace, you find your power. That's the gift of alignment. Not external success, but internal congruence. You say what you mean. You do what you say. You live what you believe. And when you don't, you feel it immediately. Because your body rejects misalignment like poison. That's how tuned in you become. So if you're tired of feeling lost, if you're exhausted from pretending, if you're fed up with chasing, you don't need a bigger vision. You don't need another self-help book. You don't need more noise. You need alignment. The courage to remove what doesn't fit. The discipline to stay the course. The honesty to live by your truth. And once you do that, once you reclaim yourself, you don't ask life to be easy. You just ask to stay true. And that truth, that's when life really begins. Living authentically is not a luxury. It's not a bonus. It's the very foundation of peace, clarity, and inner strength. And yet, most people spend their entire lives in costume, performing for acceptance, pretending for approval, hiding for safety. They become what the world tells them to become. They lose themselves in the process of being liked. But here's the truth. The real you doesn't need a mask. The real you doesn't need applause. The real you doesn't need to fit in. The real you was never broken, only buried. Authenticity is the process of digging yourself out. It's painful, yes. It's uncomfortable, but it's worth everything. Because once you start living in alignment with who you truly are, life stops feeling like an act. You don't wake up exhausted from pretending. You don't walk into rooms wondering who you need to be accepted. You just are. And in that space of just being, confidence is born. Not the loud, performative kind of confidence that needs to be seen and heard, but the quiet, unshakable kind that moves through the world with grace and power. True confidence is the result of authenticity. It's knowing that you are not chasing anything, proving anything, or hiding anything. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. You are aligned with your values. You are aligned with your voice. You are aligned with your presence. And from that place, boundaries become effortless. You don't need to argue to protect your peace. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to over-explain your no. Because when you're living from your truth, your energy communicates for you. Your life starts to emit clarity, and clarity is magnetic. People feel it. Opportunities find it. Respect responds to it. Authenticity simplifies everything. You don't chase people. You don't chase moments. You don't chase attention. Why? Because you realize that anything you have to chase isn't meant for the real you. It's meant for the version you created to impress them. And that version is gone. The mask is off. The weight is lifted. Life stops feeling heavy. Not because it suddenly became easy, but because you stopped carrying the burden of being someone you're not. That's the freedom of authenticity. You walk into a room and no longer scan for approval. You look inward and ask one question. Is this choice aligned with who I am? If yes, you move forward. If no, you walk away. No drama, no confusion, no guilt. You become your own standard. You no longer need permission. You don't look for mirrors. You look for truth. And truth simplifies everything. This is what most people miss. They think authenticity is about being different or standing out. But authenticity isn't about being seen. It's about being real. You can be quiet and authentic. You can be low-key and authentic. You can be humble and authentic. What matters is not how loud you are, but how honest you are. You stop making decisions from fear. You stop building your life on expectations that were never yours. You start reclaiming your power. And here's the paradox. When you live authentically, the world might not always understand you, but you understand yourself. And that's enough. You no longer betray yourself to make others comfortable. You no longer minimize your truth to avoid conflict. You no longer dilute your voice to be liked. Because you realize that being liked by everyone means you're being yourself to no one. You get real. And real attracts real. Real relationships. Real conversations. Real growth. Real love. And that's what you were looking for all along. You thought you were looking for status. You thought you were looking for applause. You thought you were looking for perfection. But what you really needed was connection. And connection only happens when you stop performing and start being. So what does it mean to live authentically? It means telling the truth, even when your voice shakes. It means walking away, even when it's hard. It means trusting yourself, even when the world tells you you're wrong. It means refusing to shrink just to make others feel tall. It means refusing to fake just to make others feel comfortable. It means refusing to chase just to feel worthy. You live on your terms, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of respect. Because living authentically is the ultimate form of self-respect. It says, I am worthy without pretending. I am enough without approval. I am powerful because I am me. And once you taste that feeling, you'll never go back. You'll start building your life around truth, not comfort. You'll start making decisions from your values, not your fears. You'll start saying yes to what feeds your soul, not just your ego. And yes, some people will leave, but they were never with you. They were with your mask. And in return, you'll attract people who love your silence, not just your voice. You'll attract people who admire your boundaries, not just your beauty. You'll attract people who respect your mind, not just your image. Because now, you're living in truth. You're aligned. You're real. And that's powerful. Because in a world full of filters and fakes, a man who is real is rare. And what is rare is respected. So if you're tired of the pressure, tired of the noise, tired of pretending, stop, breathe, strip away the roles, remove the mask, drop the performance, and ask yourself, what would it look like to be fully me today? Start there, live there, grow from there. Because the moment you start living authentically, life stops being heavy and starts becoming yours. Most people are waiting for the promotion, waiting for the perfect partner, waiting for the green light, waiting for the moment that finally gives them permission to start living. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Life doesn't begin when you succeed. Life begins when you find yourself and have the courage to live as that person. All the external wins in the world mean nothing if you're still hiding from your own truth. You can have the career, the status, the validation, and still feel like a stranger in your own life. Because none of it matters if it's not aligned with you. And the longer you wait to go inward, to look past the noise and remember who you are, the longer you live on autopilot. Existing, surviving, performing, but never truly being. You don't need to do more. You don't need to achieve more. You don't need to become someone new. You need to remember. Remember the parts of you that got buried under expectation. Remember the voice that got quieter every time you sought approval. Remember the truth that always lived under the lies you told yourself to fit in. It's all still there, waiting. And the moment you choose to return to yourself, that's when life really begins. Not when you have all the answers. Not when it all makes sense. Not when it's easy. But when you stop lying about who you are. When you stop living by scripts you didn't write. When you stop wearing masks to feel acceptable. When you stop chasing things you don't even want, just because the world told you to want them. The journey inward is not glamorous. It won't get applause. You'll lose people. You'll disappoint expectations. You'll shed identities you spent years building. But in return, you get your life back. You get your voice back. You get your power back. And that's worth every loss. Because once you find yourself, once you stand in that truth, the world changes. Not because the world is different, but because you are. You see things clearly. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop outsourcing your peace. You stop bending just to belong. You start speaking with intention. You start choosing with conviction. You start living like your life actually belongs to you. Because now it does. You are no longer living for a future moment. You are no longer performing for love. You are no longer surviving a life that doesn't fit. You are alive now, and the path is yours to walk. Not theirs. Not the one they picked for you. Not the one that looks best on Instagram. The one that feels right in your bones. And that requires courage. It takes courage to go inward. Courage to sit in silence. Courage to feel the pain you buried. Courage to strip away everything that's not you and face what's left. But that's where you'll find it. That's where you are. In the quiet. In the stillness. In the place where there are no filters, no followers, no performance. Just you. Raw. Unpolished. Real. And real is enough. Always has been. Always will be. So here's your call to action. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for perfection. Stop waiting for someone to come save you. No one's coming. And that's not something to fear. It's something to celebrate. Because you are the one you've been waiting for. The moment you stop running from yourself. The moment you stop hiding behind roles and rules. The moment you get still enough to feel your own heartbeat again. That's the moment your real life begins. So go inward. Get quiet. Let go of everything that was never truly you. The titles, the validation, the noise, and find the only thing that was ever real, the truth of who you are. Not who you were told to be, not who you thought you needed to be loved, not who you became to be safe, but who you actually are. And then, live from that place. Speak from that place. Build from that place. Because everything you're searching for, peace, meaning, connection, freedom, it doesn't come from becoming someone better. It comes from becoming someone truer. Find yourself, live as that person, and never look back.